I think the Cardinal Hume Centre does a fantastic job in looking after refugees. I wish there were more Cardinal Hume Centres in the country. We need them to look after young child refugees. Great job, congratulations. I was 6 years old. I came to an unaccompanied child refugee, okay? But I was luckier than many because my father had left Prague, he's Jewish, left Prague the day that the Germans occupied Prague. He said to his cousins, if they come here, I'm getting out. This is in March 1938. And his cousins said, we'll take our chance. And that was desperately unfortunate because in 1942 the Gestapo came for them and they went off to Auschwitz. So my father was here, my mother was refused permission to leave, and she got them on a Kindertransport. And I arrived in London. Anyway, eventually. It took a 2-day train journey, which is, anyway, that's another story. All I remember is at school we had to tear a picture of President Beneš out of our school books and put in stick in a picture of Hitler. And it's one of the things I can really remember, plus lots of German soldiers all over the place. Anyway, then we put on the train, and I was one of the youngest on it, if not the youngest. When the train got to Holland, the older ones all cheered because we were out of reach of the Nazis. I knew it was important, but I didn't know why. And I got to Liverpool Street and all this stuff. Anyway, that's for another. That's another story. But Nicholas Winton, by accident almost, was asked by a friend who was going skiing to go to Prague in the autumn of '38 to see what's happening, because some of the Germans had occupied the Sudetenland. That's outer region. Following the Munich Agreement, the Sudetenland Chamberlain and the Western leaders all said to Hitler, okay, you can have the Sudetenland on condition you don't have any more territorial demands. And the Western leaders were taken in by that. Anyway, so the Sudetenland was occupied by the Germans earlier in 1938. However, some of the people there did flee to Prague, and Nicholas Winton saw them and sold a desperate plight. And then when the Germans occupied Prague in March 1939, several months before the war, he realized that there were others that had to be got out. Now, he needn't have done it. You know, he had no particular background in this sort of thing. He just, you can see that what a human being can do when they really feel they've got to do something. He could have walked away, he could have gone on skiing, he was a stockbroker, he didn't have bothered. But he did it. And it's a great tribute to him as an individual. He saved my life, so of course I'm going to be praising of him. But it's a great tribute to him as an individual that he did that. He needn't have done. Many people walk away from things, or some people do. He didn't walk away. He said, I've got to do this, it's got to be done. He overcame the British bureaucracy, he overcame the Nazis, he overcame inertia, all the difficulties, and he made Britain accept the children. And Kindertransport children also came in Germany and Austria, so there were 10,000 altogether. And a lot of arguments, there weren't the arguments we get now about taking refugees. So he did it, and it happened. And it wasn't until years later that I met him and discovered who he was and what he'd done. You know, I knew I'd come on a Kindertransport, but I didn't know about the man who organised him. So I met him. Great man, he died last year, he was 106. I went to all his birthday parties, 105th, 104th. At his 103rd birthday party, I said, Nicky, how are you? Well, he said, I'm fine from the neck upwards. And he was a terrific man. And very caustic. What people didn't know was that he lives in Theresa May's constituency. That's when I first met Theresa May, because his 102nd birthday party, she came along, because MPs, when they've got a 102nd birthday party, and I don't disparage them, I'd have done the same, but I couldn't find anybody in Battersea who was 102. And she came along, and I introduced myself and chatted to her. That was the first time I met her. Now, after he died, his daughter, Barbara Winton, organised a memorial meeting at the Guildhall, and she asked me who she should invite on the government side. And she went back, and I said, oh, Theresa May, definitely. And she said, but you know, she's still Home Secretary, you know, all the stuff about immigration, would that go down well? I said, just do it. I think you'll lock it in. Now, she made a speech. Frankly, you wouldn't have believed that our Prime Minister could make such a supportive speech about refugees and so on. I couldn't believe it. In fact, I don't want to be part of it, I'm meant to be. I'd have given her a Labour membership. I I mean, you'd have all embraced her. You know, it was different. Now, I'm not saying she's like that. I'm not saying she's converted. But I do think sometimes getting people in powerful positions to speak at your own event makes you more conscious of what you're about. In other words, you should have Theresa May here, not me. Much more interesting for you. Sorry, I don't want to criticise the organisation. But you know, she did it. It's really a really positive speech, and I thought that was quite something. Right, and I'm going to finish by saying this. I was two things I'm going to say. I was outside on the green meeting some refugees who'd come earlier, many on the back of a truck. And I met this young Syrian man standing on the green outside the Palace of Westminster. And we're chatting away, and I said, well, what do you think about things? He said, I want to become, he pointed to Parliament, he said, I want to become a politician in there. And I said, oh, that's great, but shouldn't you meet one or two politicians first? anyway, it was okay, but I thought that was quite something. Now look, I'm going to tell you one of the stories. I think this country has been terrific to me. And when I was in the Commons, I was on the Standing Committee, or Public Bill Committee is now called, dealing with the British Nationality Act. Enoch Powell was on the committee, and I thought, this is quite something. Here I've come, I'm a naturalised Brit, and Britain has enabled me to become a Member of Parliament, and here I am on the committee dealing with the basis for British nationality. Oh, that was quite something. That was quite something. And I was proud to be on that committee, but I was also amazed that a country like Britain could do that. See, when I first started getting into politics, I thought the limit of my ambition could be getting on a local council. I thought that'd be terrific if I could. And then friends of mine said, you should aim higher. And then I began meeting some MPs. Now look, I have a lot of respect for MPs, but I do think, having met some MPs, I thought anybody would come in. If you have a bit of luck and so on, anybody could. And I wouldn't dissuade anybody from doing it. I think it's a worthy thing to do. Because although the newspapers are not politicians, there's hardly an MP in Parliament who hasn't given up a lot of money to do that. And it is all public service, whatever party that they're on. So I was quite pleased when the Syrian man said that. I think this country has been terrific to me, given me enormous opportunities, and I feel very privileged to have had those opportunities, and I only hope that refugees coming to Britain in a similar situation will be given the same opportunities and welcome that I've been given.
Alf mentioned, we have got some experience of working with child refugees, and I think that's been a big learning curve for us. And I'd like to put on record my respect for the hostel team for adapting their skills and bringing their experience to bear on what has been a very difficult situation, both for the child refugees but also for you. So I'd like to put that on record. So who's going to start with questions or comments?
Or criticisms?
Debbie. Debbie is the manager of the Immigration Advice Service. Alf, you met, I think she came to tea.
I came to tea, yes. You mentioned the importance of public opinion in getting the amendment through. There's part of the press that seems determined to turn public opinion against refugees. And I wonder what is the method to deal with that? How do you keep public opinion on your side?
Did everybody hear that?
Yeah, the question is how you keep public opinion on your side, given that some of the press are pretty hostile. Well, it's quite a complicated question. It's a good question, but it's quite complicated. Look, some of the press were quite supportive. The Guardian came with me, one of the Guardian reports came with me to Calais on my second visit to Calais and reported on it. And I was advised to get as much publicity as possible. Okay, some of it was quite good. But I have to say, and you may not believe this, or you probably will, on one day, the Daily Mail supported the amendment. It's the only occasion in my life I bought the Daily Mail. They moved away again. It was a sinner converted and then reverting back to sin. I think that's the theological thing. I'm here to make a difference, and that's really the basis of what I'm about. Now, what happened? Earlier this year, still this year, Save the Children did a study and said that there were 80,000 child refugees unaccompanied somewhere in Europe. And it was fairly clear we had to do something about it. And so I put forward an amendment to the immigration bill, as it then was, to say we should bring some of these children in. Now, that amendment, there was one of the Lord's Home Office ministers, and he had 3 discussions with me. And you know when somebody's talking to you and they don't believe what they're saying, you can tell, can't you? But at least I think. Anyway, I realized, and then in the middle of all this, I said, he then resigned from the government and announced he was going to walk across South America to raise money for UNICEF. Now, the media didn't pick that one up, but I thought that was interesting. I thought that was pretty interesting that he'd had enough of the arguments. Anyway, off he went. So the amendment passed the Lords, and it then went on its way to the Commons. Just before actually it passed the Lords, Theresa May, who was Home Secretary, I'm telling you all the background, not all this got in the papers, Theresa May asked me to go and see her. Now, I'd only met her once before briefly, so there I was in her office in the Commons, and she wanted me to withdraw the amendment. And I said, why? And she said, well, if we take unaccompanied children who are in Europe, then more will come. It'll be a magnet. And I said, but that means turning our back on 80,000 children, or some of them anyway, turning our back on them. And some of them had disappeared. They were in a very vulnerable position. You will know they were liable to be involved in criminality, to be trafficked, to be taken into prosecution, all sorts of horrible things, subject to violence. So I said, well, we can't turn our back on them, we just can't do it. I'm too committed, I can't do it. So we parted on, well, I think quite good terms. Anyway, the amendment then went to the Commons. And I was told by my friends in the Commons there are 2 benches, okay, and for the Lords above. And one was sitting above the Labour benches looking at the Tory benches, and the other was looking above the Tory benches looking at the Labour ones. Now, the whole point of this, I'm not supposed to be party political, but the whole point of it was to get Conservative MPs not to support the government, but to support the amendment. Anyway, so I was on my own actually, it's all empty up there. I sat there, and I was told to give them the eye. This is another form of lobbying. Give them the eye. So I don't know how to do this, I'm not an actor, but anyway, so I gave them the eye. And John Bercow, the speaker, nodded to me, and one or 2 Tory MPs saw me sitting there and nodded to me. Anyway, it came the division. Oh, before that, the wonderful Jo Cox, she was below me, because I couldn't see her, but she made that great speech, which was much quoted after her tragic murder, a speech in defence of refugees and refugee children. Anyway, the vote came, and 1 or 2 other people did it, and you could see some of them were going to vote and not vote, and eventually the government just pulled through. So I got to the back of the speaker's chair to talk to some of my friends, and Theresa May walked by, and she smiled, and I said, well, she said, you won that one, but we're still here. Well, I was trying to be polite, because, I'm polite. Anyway, so it then went back to the Lords and got a bigger majority. A bit. So then it was on its way to the Commons. And by this time, something astonishing did begin to happen, and that is public opinion. And my thesis is public opinion was what made such an enormous difference. Because what happened was, everywhere I went to speak at meetings, I said, if you've got a government supporting MP, please lobby them to get them, persuade them to vote for the amendment. And I think that began to work. We got the sense that it was happening, and the feedback was we were on our way to possibly winning. So Theresa May asked me to go and see her again. I didn't know she was going to be Prime Minister, but still, this was very important, Home Secretary asked me again. And she said, we propose to accept your amendment. I said, great, wonderful. So there it was. And then I had the pleasure of seeing this, my amendment, on the Commons order paper with her name on it. So that was good. And the government minister, the immigration minister, phoned me up the next day and said, we propose to accept the letter and spirit of the amendment, which I thought was pretty good. Now, I've mentioned public opinion, but several other things were also happening. In the meantime, I went to Calais. I don't know, have any of you been to Calais? It's gone now, thank heavens, but I went twice to Calais, really the amendment was concerned with unaccompanied children in Europe, and the government said that they would interpret that, which was okay, as meaning particularly Greece, Italy and France, because those are the three areas where there are the most unaccompanied child refugees. And so the government said anybody who had been in Europe before the 20th of March, again, there were so many before the 20th of March, it wasn't worth arguing about that. That was their interpretation of the amendment. That wasn't in the amendment. Can I just say one other thing? I'll just explain, because you probably followed this. The original amendment said we should take 3,000. That was based on our taking Britain's share of the total. I never said we should take them all. And so the 3,000 figure was in the amendment. Now, can I just bore you with some parliamentary gobbledygook? Are you up for it? I know it's early in the morning. Well, I only learned it in the course of this, so I was only a few months ahead of you. So, in the Lords, we don't pass stuff on taxation. We can do everything else. We can't do taxation and expenditure. And so the 3,000 amendment was defeated in the Commons, but the Speaker said you can't use financial privilege only. Now, financial privilege, you're going to come away as constitutional experts. Okay, all of you. You put in all this. Oh, anyway, so 3,000 figure attracted financial privilege. What happens is the clerks tell the Speaker it's financial privilege. And that means that the Lords has passed an amendment which says there's going to be government spending. If you've got a figure of 3,000, they have to be supported. So that involves expenditure. And the Speaker told the government off for saying there were other arguments we should use than just financial privilege. Now, for most of every amendment attacks expenditure, doesn't it, pretty well? Hard to devise one that doesn't. But however, in most instances, the government simply waived the financial privilege, and they didn't waive it in this case. We discovered that hardly any of the Dublin 3 children had come here. But under pressure of the amendment to bring the ones that didn't have family here, who were totally unaccompanied anywhere in Europe, we put pressure on the government on Dublin 3 as well, and that pressure did help. So the first ones were actually Dublin 3 who came here because they were a place to go to. You don't have to find foster parents. And I was talking to some social workers, and they said to me, if somebody volunteers to be a foster family, it can take 6 months before they're vetted. That's an awfully long time. I think it could be shortened. But at any rate, it is right and proper that we should be as careful about refugee children fostered as we should about any other children being fostered. So that is proper. At any rate, the Dublin 3 children began coming, and some of the others are now coming. And I think to date we've had about 350, if you add both categories. But there's several hundred more. I believe, as has been said before, that we should take about half the children who've been in Calais, which is quite a few hundred more who are dispersed over France. So that is where we stand on that. Now I want to say a bit more about local authorities, a bit about and a bit about Nicholas Winton. I've talked to local authorities, and some of them are stepping up to the mark and saying, yes, we will take some. Now, I happen to live in Hammersmith, and I got hold of the leader of Hammersmith Council. We've been canvassing for the referendum, and when you get the leader of a council in a pub, and you've been canvassing all day over a pint or two of beer, things work. I'm not saying that's the way to lobby over a pint of beer, but all these things help.